Hi, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us today for today's webinar about the new coffee sustainability program from education. This is the first of two webinars. This one's going to be in English, and we have one next week in Spanish. I'm going to wait a couple seconds before I start introducing everyone we have here today leading the webinar so that all of our attendees can arrive. All right, well, we're going to get started. So you may recognize some friendly faces here. We're going to start with Kim-Elena Ionesco, who is SCA's Chief Sustainability and Knowledge Development Officer. And then we're also joined today by Erica Koss, who is a research associate at the University of Nairobi and part of the creators group for this program. As is Haynes Motzinger, who is the Social Innovation Program Coordinator at the Wondery, which is Vanderbilt University's Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship. So these two are part of our creator group who created this curriculum, and we will be joined by two of the other creators in our next webinar next week. And then we're also joined today by Frans Tapkin, and Frans is a founder and creator of Spoon and Tamper, which is a coffee consultancy and training center in the Netherlands. And he's also an AST and one of the first people to participate in the pilot foundation and intermediate courses that we ran early this year. So I'm going to open up a slide deck and turn it over to this group to tell you all about this new program.
Thank you, Sierra. Will you introduce yourself too?
Yes. My name is Sierra Hatcher, and I am a communications coordinator here at the SCA. And I will be in the background helping keep things going.
Thank you, Sierra. All right, so it is, I can see the slides, but not in presentation mode yet.
There we are.
Still the same. This does sometimes happen. It happens to me a lot. Oh, good, there it is.
All right, great.
All right, well, I'll kick it off. Welcome, everyone. Next slide. I'd like to start off with some sort of, after the title and the introduction, some basic housekeeping stuff. I'm also going to try to keep my part of the talking a little bit shorter than usual because I just had an unexpected dentist appointment. So I'm afraid I might be drooling if I talk too much or a little bit more difficult to understand. But hopefully by the end of the hour, I'll be my more articulate self. Next slide. So the housekeeping, I always forget to say this unless I put it on a slide and read it. So I'll read from the slide right now, which is to say that the webinar is being recorded and we will upload it afterwards to SCA News and the SCA podcast also. So if you miss something, if you have to leave early, if you tell someone about this and they want access to it, then it will be available in those two places. If you have questions along the way, we'll have time for questions at the end, but also you may feel free to submit your questions using the questions panel, which should be over in your GoToMeeting sidebar. And then you may use the raise hand function to ask a question during the question and answer period if you'd prefer to vocalize as opposed to write your question down. So, like I said, plenty of time for Q&A, but if something occurs to you along the way, then feel free to use that, that chat question function. Next slide. So we've done our introductions already. I'm Kim-Elena Ionescu, and we'll go through, everyone will get a chance to talk. So I'll skip through the slide too and jump right into the overview of the webinar. So we're going to start off, I'll talk a little bit about the motivations that we have as an association for creating this program. Then we'll go into the overview of the content that's covered and how the course work, the arc of it was designed. And we'll discuss the course philosophy and then get some AST perspective on who the course is for, how it's different from other SCA courses, who might want to take this course, and then we'll have some question time. Next slide. So the motivation for launching the course, I mean, I could go pretty far back in the SCA's history and talk about all of the many iterations of a volunteer-led sustainability that we've had over the years. But I think that in the macro sense, coffee is facing challenges that we talked about on other sustainability webinars that we've had recently. The price crisis that the SCA is working on this year is an example of those. Climate change is another one of those existential threats to coffee and the coffee industry as we know it. So those are some of the reasons that we are motivated to create a program around coffee sustainability. But if we have these macro challenges that are part of the motivation, there are also complementary motivations that are much more rooted in individual experiences. So at the same time that we face these threats, we also see and read all the time that there are there's an increasing desire by young people to work for companies that share their values and that believe in sustainability and that demonstrate that commitment in a concrete way. And similarly, that more and more customers and consumers are going out of their way to find and then pay premiums for sustainable products. So this is reflecting not only a need and kind of a threat, but also a real opportunity. And so seeing that and realizing that there were gaps to be filled and there was a need arising, that's the backdrop for the creation of the Coffee Sustainability Program. And it was, as I alluded to a minute ago, it comes from a history of volunteer-led sustainability work, including other iterations of sustainability courses through our education program. But before the unification of the American and European Specialty Coffee Associations, but also from such things as, workshops at Expo or lectures at World of Coffee or the webinars that we do and the white papers. So all of these resources that have been created are part of this body of work. But this is a different step for us because it places the sustainability work and the sustainability knowledge into this realm of education and professional development, so that as opposed to being something that was, I think, for a long time seen as a nice to have, it is now becoming something that we realize is like a need to have kind of knowledge and experience. And so as we are the association more broadly moving to kind of integrate sustainability, this is one way in which we are pushing that out into the broader community. And so the course that we have now, as opposed to some of the resources that we've had in the past, doesn't only address one manifestation of a sustainability challenge, like a white paper on food security in coffee, or a lecture at Expo that's about a successful gender equality program in Bolivia. This course and this program really goes and digs deep into the roots of why there's a need for sustainability at all, why we're talking about this, what the sort of conditions were that led us to be in the position that we're in now. And so I think there's a depth that would benefit anyone who's curious about coffee at all. But we'll get into that more as we talk about the who should take the course a little bit later in the webinar. Next slide.
Hi, everyone. So I'm Haynes, and I'm going to talk a little bit about how the course was designed and then give a fairly broad overview of the content of the course, our goals and visions when we began creating it. So to begin, a little bit of background about how the course was designed. It was a very iterative process that took a number of months, so many phone calls, so many email exchanges, and included a lot of different actors from across the supply chain in the design and development of the curriculum. So some of you may be aware, but at the 2018 SCA Expo in Seattle, there was a Sustainability Essentials workshop. Some of you perhaps may have taken it, which was facilitated by Nora Berkey and Kate Fisher, who are two of the other creators of the Coffee Sustainability Program. And that workshop was really seen as a way to gauge student interest and industry interest in learning about coffee sustainability and how to engage in effective action. There was an overwhelming positive response for that workshop. I actually was lucky enough to participate in that workshop, and I think there are about 25 or 30 students. It was wonderful. It was kind of a combination of what is now the foundation and intermediate levels of the Coffee Sustainability Program. So after Kate and Nora and the SCA realized that there's a lot of interest in students learning about sustainability and sustainable challenges confronting the industry, they decided to move forward with building out a formal coffee sustainability program and curriculum that would be relevant to all stakeholders in the industry. From my understanding, the SCA had already been working a little bit on thinking about designing this type of curriculum, had done a little bit of the groundwork, but hadn't yet started pursuing intensively the actual design of the program. So after the SCA Expo in 2018, the SCA told Kate and Nora about the process of building out a formal curriculum, which was, it depends on the creation of a creators group. So that is a core group of people that kind of manage the process of the design. And in addition to that, this particular program has a review committee that added a lot of really meaningful feedback, guidance, and suggestions about the content. So an application was opened for individuals across the industry who might be valuable contributors to the creation of this curriculum. And at the end of that application process, 4 creators who had the time and the interest in committing to this pursuit over 6 to 8 months came together as the creators group. And to support the creators group, a team of about 10 to 12 individuals from around the world came together to form the review committee. Once those 2 groups were formed, started the very iterative, in-depth process of designing the curriculum. It started by really trying to understand the goals and objectives and the key learning takeaways that we wanted students to have, the things that we felt were most important to the industry based on what we knew from all of this research that has been coming out over the past couple of years, and what Kim just mentioned a couple of minutes ago about white papers, how to integrate all those learnings into one comprehensive curriculum. After really setting the framework of those core goals and objectives, the review committee and the creators group built out an initial pass at a foundation level of the curriculum. And the foundation level, which I'll talk about in a minute, is the broad overview of sustainability challenges confronting the industry. It's an introduction to this topic. It addresses the complexity of working to address sustainability challenges. And then after we created an initial pass, at each iteration, the curriculum was sent back to the review committee for feedback, making sure it was inclusive and had diverse perspectives, making sure that it was a curriculum that would be valuable to people, not just in producing countries or not just in consuming countries, but to people across the value stream. It took probably 6 to 8 months total to develop the first pass of the curriculum. And I think it's important to note that this will be a living, breathing curriculum. And as the sustainability challenges change in the industry, perhaps the curriculum will change and adapt. But we're really excited to have this initial version, and we can tell more about the process if anyone is interested. So next slide. So after we went through the design of building out the review and core committees and really figuring out the direction and what the essential topics were to cover, we decided to build out 3 levels of the curriculum, which are a foundation level, an intermediate level, and a professional level. And across the board, these 3 levels have a series of goals. So a major goal is to create a common language of sustainability, sustainable development, and what we mean when we talk about resiliency in the industry. So as many of you I'm sure know, those terms can mean 10 different things to 10 different people. So really trying to forge a common direction, common understanding of what we mean when we talk about those terms. Another major goal is to help forge a common understanding of the complexity of addressing sustainability challenges. There's no one answer, there's no silver bullet, and it takes a lot of concerted effort. So really helping students to think through, given this complexity, what role can I play and how can I do that effectively and efficiently, and in a way that supports the broader efforts in the industry to address challenges. We wanted to design a program that raises and considers challenging questions like who benefits from sustainability initiatives, who pays the price for these different projects, who makes the decisions about what gets done and what doesn't. It's really important that we ask those questions, and so through the 3 levels of the curriculum we get at all of these different major goals and learning objectives. So to give kind of a quick overview, which we will talk about more a bit later, and happy to answer questions again. The curriculum starts out with the foundation level. It's an 8-hour in-class course. So the first pilot was actually taught at SCA Expo this year by Erica Koss, one of our panelists, and Nora Berkey. And the foundation course is meant to be accessible for anyone in the industry. Anybody is going to learn something and have a major takeaway about sustainability in the coffee sector. This course provides a broad overview of the sustainability challenges confronting the industry and how those sustainability challenges transcend the value stream. So how a challenge in a consuming country might then affect a challenge in a producing community, and how there's interconnections and intersectionality between all these different challenges that we're facing. It also teaches students to really begin to understand the complexity of acting on behalf of sustainability, and how to think about the diverse social, economic, political, environmental factors that need to be considered when you start thinking about, you know, what can I do? Like, what can my coffee company do that will contribute to the broader effort to confront these major challenges in our industry? That course does have a final in-class exam that students take. Exams are also moving to an online exam, which I'm sure someone else can talk about later on if there are questions around that. After passing the foundation course, students can move on to intermediate level. And the intermediate level is more discussion and research based. It does have 8 hours of in-class time. Some ASTs might teach this online, some might teach it in person, both will be options. And then there's 8 hours of out of class time where students are really digging into a project on their own. This part of the course is really designed to help students think analytically about the impact they'd like to have in the industry, and to really understand what role they can play based on their position and their connections in the industry. So it's oriented around case studies, deep research into sustainability initiatives that have been run before, to really try and understand what works and what doesn't, and what can we learn from those who have gone before or are acting now. At the end of the intermediate course, also interestingly, students get to propose a project that they would like to work on based on this learning that they do. And then, should they choose to go to the professional level after passing intermediate, this is all about how do we actually implement, design, and carry out a project, even if it's a pilot version of a project, a tiny prototype. How do we begin to act in a way that's intentional and informed by all of this deep learning that we've been doing in foundation and intermediate level? That is for, we don't anticipate that everybody that takes foundations will take professional. This course has 10 hours of class time, and then upwards of 3 to 4, possibly 6 months on your own working with a mentor to actually design and implement a project that is conceptualized with intention and in full awareness of your distinct capabilities and resources. our overarching goal of this curriculum is, through the foundation and intermediate and professional levels, ensure that there's a place for everyone, and that even if you're only able to take foundation level, you're going to walk away with a very deep understanding of the sustainability challenges confronting this industry, and with a little bit more knowledge about how do I start thinking about what I want to do, what my coffee company can do, and about how my piece of the puzzle fits in with everything else. So that's a very quick, very broad overview. I'll pass it on to Erica to talk a little bit about the philosophy behind the curriculum.
Thank you, Haynes. So hi, everyone. I'm Erica Koss, and I'm delighted to be joining from Nairobi, Kenya. It's pitch black here, so I hope everyone can see and hear me okay. I think we can go to the next slide, Sarah. So Haynes gave you a really great overview of the curriculum and the 3 levels. And what I wanted to do is just take a few minutes on this webinar and talk a little bit about why words matter and about this deeper concept of sustainability, and why do we begin in the curriculum with talking about defining sustainability. When I teach this course at the foundation level, I like to begin with some words from one of my favorite novels, Alice in Wonderland, specifically the second half, Through the Looking Glass. And if you can see this slide, it's from the library walk in New York City when you're walking to the public library. There's a bunch of quotes there on the ground. And one of them is one of my favorite sections from this very well-known book and movie that many of us all around the world really love a lot. Because a little girl in the story, Alice, is asking in this moment an egg, Humpty Dumpty, about words. And what they're really having a big debate about is, what is the meaning of words and why do they matter? And so Humpty Dumpty says to her, when I use a word, it means just what I choose it to mean, neither more nor less. And Alice, the little girl, asks him, the question is whether you can make words mean so many things. And then Humpty Dumpty replies, the question is, which is to be master? That is all. And the conversation between them goes on, but I like to begin with that because it's one way to enter that conversation about how a word is used, and which version of that word is master is part of the fundamental debate here. For me personally, my coffee career began at the same time when I was working on my master's degree in literature. I was a barista for several years in San Diego. I began in 1996. And I was doing that work while I was working on my literary master's degree. And so for me, language and words and how we think about the global north and the global south have all been integrated in my own mind and my own background. When I think about that words can be both something that conceal and camouflage, words can be something that can be a blessing and a joy. Words can be something that can be a weapon. They can be a shield. Words have also been one way that colonialization happened. And as we all know, in coffee countries, in most cases, it was because of colonialism that coffee first came to individual countries. And certainly that's the case of Kenya, where I'm now living. In the spirit of the idea that words can also express our humanity, whether it's emotional or rational thought, this is where I think the connection begins, even when we think about a buzzword. And that's a term that is used a lot. What is a buzzword? And part of what that is a word which I would say, like sustainability, where it's so overused and so used everywhere that it almost loses its meaning. And so when we think about what is the problem when a word loses its meaning? Well, when it's a word like sustainability, I believe it's very, very important, because how a word is defined or not defined, in this case, especially when we're talking about such a complex global supply chain as coffee, it has a lot of meaning in terms of who has the power to use that word and to use that concept, whether it's at the producer farm level or at any point in the supply chain. So in that spirit, I think we can go to the next slide, Sierra. And what I am suggesting, yes, okay. So what I also like to focus on at the beginning of foundation is to remind all of us that the word sustain actually comes from its etymology, from sub plus teneo, which literally means to hold up. And I just put some pictures there of a couple different hands, and of course there's a latte there where, you know, anyone who made that latte is using his or her hands, and then whoever is drinking that latte will use his or her hands, because especially with coffee, it passes through so many different hands all throughout the chain. And I would believe that, you know, in order for the industry to be truly sustainable, there has to be an equal amount of sustainability for every single member at every single point of the chain. Next slide. And like many political words these days, they can become buzzwords and we forget what they mean, or maybe we never even knew what they meant to begin with. And they're used so many different ways. So I like to take us back to the very first time this word was ever used. It was actually created by poet Geoffrey Chaucer, who some of you might know wrote the Canterbury Tales and many other poems. And to sustain is a verb. So if it's a verb, that means that there's action. So when we talk about what it means to sustain anyone or anything, whether we're talking about our earth or whether we're talking about humans, what we're talking about is all of these things here on the slide. We're talking about what does it mean to bear, withstand, and endure? What does it mean to defend, support, or continue? What does it mean to provide for? And then quite literally, what does it mean to uphold or hold up? And all of that is coming from the Oxford English Dictionary in terms of the root of this word, which I believe is such a beautiful word and is partly why it makes me sad when its meaning is lost or misused. Next slide. So to just finish my portion here about, you know, a bigger sense of the philosophy behind all this, you know, this is just, you know, one way to begin for anyone in the class to consider what is the definition. It's not that any of us who are teaching it are telling our students what they should or should not define sustainability as, but we do go back to the history of the term, which began from the point of view of the United Nations in the 1980s with a report called Our Common Future, which was the first time in 1987 when the term sustainable development began. And then we go through a little bit of that history of sustainability and sustainable development, talk about how that ultimately intersects with coffee, and we talk about many of the challenges in terms of gender equity, the climate challenges, the price crisis. Haynes used the word earlier, intersectionality. That might be a new word for some of you, but it's the idea that anyone who is experiencing inequities will have intersecting challenges in terms of those inequalities, and so we need to look at each of them specifically and in the particular, and try not to generalize about what anyone's challenges might be. So I think I'll leave it there since we'll have time for questions and answers, and I'll turn it over to you, Franz, for the AST perspective and how this curriculum compares to the other trainings that you've been giving through the years.
Well, thank you, Erica. As an AST, I always wanted to learn more, and especially teaching green coffee, the green coffee module, I got a lot of questions about sustainability, and I ended up with more questions than I had proper answers for. A lot of the answers I found and heard from other people were hearsay and gut feeling. So when I heard about the new module, the new curriculum for sustainability, I really wanted to jump ahead and join as soon as possible. And I'm really happy that I did. For me, a lot of things fell into place, and I can properly give students, well, not the answers straightforward of their question, but I can help them guide to form their own answer. And based at that that answer on facts and not on only on gut feeling or on hearsay. So that was my main reason for joining. First as a student, just wanting to learn. And while I was going through the whole curriculum in foundation and later in intermediate, I really thought, well, if I can learn this and I get new insights and I learn all new things, I want to teach this module. So really happy to get this opportunity. And last week was the first session I taught the foundation. Really different from the other modules that I teach, because it was a lot more guided and planned discussion. In other modules, for instance, in brewing, it's much straightforward, and you try out things and you get a result. And through discussions through the whole day, at the end of the day, you help people realize and see other things than they did before they came in, and just open up their mind and give them a broader view. Not give them the answer, but give them a more view and give them the tools to research their questions. Next slide, please. So a little bit further into teaching this module, it was really strange because starting out, you don't have a machine to hide behind. Usually with either barista or roasting or brewing, you have all kind of tools to hide behind. And with this, you have a couple of Post-its, you have your presentations, and you have your whiteboard, and you have your knowledge, and you have the group. And for this module, the group is really important. I got some questions of people who wanted a one-on-one session, and I think that will never work, because then there is only discussion between the AST and the student, and I think the group forms your training. So looking at my own foundation compared to the foundation I taught, it was a really different group, so different discussions, different views. Yeah, really helpful to have a good and diverse group. Next slide, please. So the big question, I'm a Caucasian male brought up in the Western world. I'm Dutch, and as you know, the Dutch had something to do in the whole colonization of the world. And is it appropriate for me to teach this module? Well, I struggled with this a lot. I talked with my teachers, with Erica, with Nora about this, and I think that anybody who can broaden their mind, and open up other people's minds, according to sustainability, is capable and it's appropriate to teach this module. So yeah, that's my little bit, and I hope I can entice you guys to join a session, or at least look a little bit more into sustainability.
And I said I'd wrap up a little bit with the question of who is the ideal student for this class, you know, or who should take the course. And I really have been thinking, even as I've heard you all talking and thought about the development of it, and how you know, we created this course, or envisioned it to not be limited to one role. So it's not like a green coffee buyer, but everyone else can take it too, you know, or it's not assigned to a specific value chain role, or like a nonprofit development project role, because it doesn't start with like a sort of set of very specific things to learn in order to be able to complete a set of, you know, tasks that are maybe physical in nature. It is this intellectual exploration that can be applied to so many different areas of coffee. And over the course of time, I think also, you know, even someone like me who's worked for many years with a sustainability title for 12 years now, when I was reviewing the materials going into this course as part of the review committee, and I found things that I'd never read before, and I sort of heard perspectives sitting in on the first pilot course that happened, listening to the other participants, kind of like Fran said, I got a lot out of hearing the perspectives that other students and other participants in the course were sharing. So I really valued learning from the creators here who have a background in this that's very different from mine, and perspectives that are different from mine. And I've also enjoyed hearing from people who come to a class saying, I'm not a sustainability expert, but I'm interested in this. You know, I have opinions, I have my own experiences, I have questions, I have doubts. And so that even if it's not your sort of full-time passion, the idea that it's something that's if you have the seed of curiosity, I think that this course would really benefit you. And I think that goes, you know, friends spoke to being white, male, Dutch, that you know, the creation of this course, I think we're all cognizant of the fact that this is coming from like the United States. We have a US, Europe panel composed here. Eric is living in Nairobi, and that these are not issues that we're talking about that are limited to the perspectives of people who are in the consuming side of the value chain, or in the global north, or, you know, however we would kind of categorize a dichotomy that can sometimes exist. And so accessibility is very much part of our you know, part of the tension that we're grappling with the course like this one. And it should be, honestly, for all of our courses, you know, and it is. I think it just becomes more acute with sustainability, both because we're really talking about power dynamics head on, you know, in a way that maybe a different curriculum wouldn't address that. So when we surface it, then we want to do something about it. And then second, because for a long time also, when sustainability was like a nice to have as opposed to a need to have component of learning, then it would be someone's volunteer time or someone's you know, their passion project, and as such they might do this for free. They might you know, give a sort of a side course, and there might be someone who has a small business but loves sustainability, so put a little bit of time into it, but not kind of it wouldn't be what they do for a living. They wouldn't have been trained in it. It would just be something they were interested in. And as we are beginning to see sustainability differently, then it also means kind of a different level of seriousness and rigor that are applied to the development of the course, the teaching of the course. And so anyway, that's a bit of a tangent, but just to think to acknowledge again that there are we're at the beginning of this process, and we're looking forward to the development of it, and glad to see, you know, as many people who are on the webinar, presumably to learn and ask questions and show up as participants as there are.
Thank you, Kim. Right, I see we have a couple of questions. I'm passing those along to our panelists as we go over some of the last slides. Shall I continue in the slide deck?
Yeah, I think so. And I wanted to add one thought that just to support what Franz was saying about his first class in Europe last week. And also, Kim, what you were just saying. So I taught the first foundation class in Africa last week, which was an amazing privilege. And I ended up having 5 students. 2 are Kenyan, and both of those 2 Kenyans are working at different parts of the coffee supply chain. And 2 were not from Kenya, but they're living here. One gentleman from France and one woman from Canada. In both of those cases, they were not in coffee at all. They were just interested in getting involved in sustainability, specifically with coffee. They both have different expertise from 2 completely different industries, but they are passionate about coffee, and they wanted to get involved in sustainability. And then my 5th student was a fellow AST who is going to go through the whole curriculum, and I can't wait, so then she can also teach these courses in Africa as well. So I just wanted to support what you were both saying, is that the curriculum is definitely not even designed purely and only for coffee professionals, although we do use all our examples from coffee. But with this trend in sustainability and resilience in the 21st century, more and more jobs are including different sustainability expertise components, even in the job descriptions. And even I've talked to many people here in East Africa where there's different expectations about what that would look like in terms of the transformation of job opportunities. So we hope that this curriculum will attract more students like that and broaden it even a little bit beyond coffee. So I think, Sierra, did you want to lead the Q&A and then we'll answer questions?
Thanks, Erica. Yeah, I can drop the questions into the chat for you to see, or I can just read them off here, whatever is easier for everyone.
I see a couple of questions that have come in about the cost piece. I was sort of speaking to that earlier, so I'm happy to pick that up. There's one about scholarship opportunities, which is something that, yes, we are absolutely working on. It's been for the SCA at large. We have made more progress against our events when it comes to scholarships, both on an individual basis and then through something like our Lead Scholars program on an ongoing basis for the sort of a small group to continue to have access to events, like despite the fact that it might be cost prohibitive for an individual. But I think that is something that bears more further investigation with education and more of a how do you say it, to codify it, because right now with a decentralized education program like the one that we have, you can find courses in a lot of different places by a lot of different instructors at different price levels, but it also makes it to make something that is like a sort of codified in that way. It's more challenging the less centralized we are to be able to put something like that together. But yes, I think that there are scholarships in events, and there are I'm sort of putting out the intention to work more on scholarship as it relates to access to education also. And then the other one about cost is having the price. In Indonesia, not too many people are able to join the class. Again, that's like I think a similar theme about the cost prohibitive nature of the education or the cost being a barrier that we want to break down. And some of the fact that it exists is just it's a legacy of how this organization has grown and where we have been based in terms of our membership toward the beginning, our offices, our staff. But as we continue to grow and as more and more of the excitement and energy and growth in specialty coffee comes from places that are not necessarily in the United States or Europe, then we are being on a daily basis talking about how does it, what does it mean to be as active in Indonesia as we are in, Italy. So, so it's a work in progress. As I don't have kind of characteristic of this curriculum. I don't have an easy answer for that to say like, oh, we've solved that, or it's going to be easy to address in all of the different geographies in the world where we have passionate sustainability or specialty coffee professionals who are like yearning for opportunities and can't get the access to them. But we're working on it. I mean it.
So I'll jump in to answer these questions about availability of courses and the online platform. So I just want to say thank you to all of you who are asking these questions, because to support what Kim was just saying, please remember this curriculum is brand new. The first time we ever taught it, ever in the world, was April in Boston at Expo. And as was mentioned, Nora and I co-taught that course. We had 15 students and they were from all around the world in different parts of the supply chain. But of course, those were people who were able to come to Boston Expo. For whoever asked the question from Rwanda, please write me. My contact information is there. I really hope to come over to Rwanda and teach this course as soon as I can. And I think to the extent that, especially in East Africa, people are interested in this program, it will even help me be able to try to work on scholarship opportunities and other possible corporate sponsors and other people who might be willing to support that availability here, especially since I do happen to be based in Nairobi this year. For me personally, my next foundation class will take place at the AFCA conference in Zanzibar. And then on the online question, we've mentioned our co-creators, Nora and Kate, are both teaching online sections, which you can see on the SCA Education AST calendar. And I believe they have a couple spots left, so you can check that out. Franz, I don't know if you've already named your next foundation class or not, but I know you're happy to have people contact you as well in Europe.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm trying to do, or at least I planned to do a Dutch version once every 2 or 3 months, and an English version every 2 months. And I do the in-person version. So yeah, look at my website, contact me, and yeah, there will be a session available very, very soon.
And I think the AST calendar, of course, is a great resource, but that doesn't necessarily reflect the interest that all 4 of us co-creators, Franz, and then some of you will meet Ricardo next week in the Spanish webinar, because a lot of us are interested to travel and teach, but those might not be on the AST calendar.
And I'm seeing a lot of questions about the different locations where this course and this program will be able to be taught eventually. Is it just a matter of having more and more people trained to do this? We have people in the US, we have people in Asia asking these questions, interest in Africa.
There's no one at the moment in Asia, but we have someone who will be trained after she completes professional and by the time that is over in 2020.
And I was just going to say, I think it's an opportunity for this curriculum in that Franz mentioned that you're not standing in front of a roasting machine or in front of a espresso machine. It's a critical thinking curriculum, and it's not something where you necessarily have to be in person. And so, looking for those online courses wherever you are in the world, there will be increasingly more opportunities to take them. And this is something that you can do remote, which is really valuable and a really cool opportunity compared to other classes that are offered through SCA. So just do keep that in mind.
And then I also have a question here about the intermediate and professional level courses and when those will be getting started.
They've already started. We have been teaching intermediate. A few of us have done it a few times already, and those will continue. And then we're launching the first ever professional class at the end of this month. And so for anyone in that professional course who is already an AST, like the person in Asia whom I just mentioned, once she graduates in April, then because she's already an AST, she'll be able to teach it there. So, just remember everyone, this is new and we really want to build out this program. So your feedback is really important, and we would love to work with you to make this more available.
This question about, it sounds like the professional level focuses more so on project design, whereas the intermediate level involves more discussion review of case studies. Is that right? And Erica, jump in if I missed something, but I would say that yes, that is the general idea. The intermediate level is designed to get you ready to think about more in-depth project design and implementation of a pilot component of your project. The goal of intermediate is to introduce the student, to a number of case studies, a number of different approaches to help you start thinking about what is possible where I am and with what I know and what resources I have, and then to use that knowledge to develop an initial proposal for a project. And then the professional level is, it touches on project design, so how you might use human-centered design or design thinking or research-based design, monitoring and evaluation to really actually implement that project that you conceptualized in intermediate. It's also fully possible to design a new project in professional that is not what you worked on in intermediate. Our idea, though, was that if you start a project in intermediate, you would then have some continuity into professional if you carry that project forward, but that is flexible.
I think that's a great summary, Haynes. And the only thing I would just add to that is that part of why we're focusing so much on project design and case studies and research is because when you look at the history of sustainability and even sustainability in coffee, there have been many, many efforts made toward particular initiatives and particular solutions. And some of those have now, in the course of 20 and 30 years, been demonstrated that they don't work. And so part of the point here is that we don't want, in this global effort, you know, with climate change and the coffee price crisis and all these other challenges, we don't want to just reinvent the wheel. We want everyone who's taking this course to look at history, see what's been done in whatever area you're in. So if you're a barista, you can take the course and you can focus on any part of that you want to, whether it's coffee waste or milk or you know, water in coffee. You know, there's many ways to approach this. So, you know, that's part of, back to the philosophy a little bit, is that we really want some true solutions to come out of this. And there was a question I just saw about why is the course not fully online? It is in some cases. At this time, again, because the course is new, there's only a few of us who are ASTs who are teaching the course, but depending on different people's teaching styles, some people are teaching it fully online. My personal style is I'd rather be live, especially because I'm in East Africa now, so I'm trying to do as much live teaching as I can. And I think, Franz, that's your same spirit in the Netherlands. So it just depends on the AST.
If I can get a question about the minimum and maximum number of people in the course. For me personally, 4 is the minimum. Because you want to get a good discussion going on, and you for a good discussion you need 4. The maximum amount of people for me personally is 250, because that's the largest room I can rent. I think there's no limit on the amount of people that can join. As long as you can.
Wow.
As long as everybody can join the discussion and nobody is hiding in a corner and just being there to only be at the place and do the exam in the end, I think it can be as large as possible.
And this question about course offerings in the United States, if I particularly will be offering any soon, or if there are any coming up, I do not have any on the AST calendar yet, as I work a full-time job at Vanderbilt University and it really hinders my time, but I am open to the conversation. Please do email me. Kate Fisher and Nora Berkey are also in the United States, and I can help get you connected. If I'm not on the timeline that you want to be on, there are options. And it just is to say that, yes, there are courses in the United States and in this part of the world, and I'm happy to help support you in any way that I can.
Thanks, Haynes.
So I see this question here about specifically with Ethiopia, where traceability is difficult to source specialty coffee. I think there's many answers to that question, but again, personally, I would love to be coming to Ethiopia to teach this course, and then whoever asked that question, we can work together on a project where you could explore that more if that's what's interesting to you. But I do agree that these complexities about traceability and sourcing and exporting and importing are really important aspects of sustainability. And when it comes to coffee, a lot of times those are not, we don't have a lot of data on those kinds of projects. So this is another value we believe of this curriculum over time, is that if, for example, we have a cohort of professional projects of experts who have done this work and done this training and then applied it, then we hope to, we imagine a kind of sustainability library of best practices. That's something for the future. We're not there yet because it's so new, but that is something that our creators group is already imagining. So these questions of traceability are really, really important, and we would love, the curriculum is open to all of these questions is really the message that I just want to convey.
Yeah, I was going to add something to that, which is that I think it sounds like some kind of project around traceability would be a good, like, intermediate or professional level project. I also feel like there are, approaching it from one side, it would be even the foundation level course. There's an exploration of sort of what works in different geographies, or like what are some of the things that have been tried. And traceability is, as sort of is noted in there, easier in some places maybe than Ethiopia. So why is that? What is it about Ethiopia and the decisions that have been made by the government or the structure of co-ops that have led to that? That could be maybe even a back and forth between the teacher and the participant. And then also I think that there's one final thing that I would find really interesting about that like question, or the imagining this exploration of why it is that buyers ask for traceability, and what is the sort of history in which coffee has not been traceable, who benefits from that, why is it difficult to have traceable coffee, what are the obstacles, who is bearing the burden of that, what is the competitive disadvantage to not having traceability, or that being difficult, who benefits from this push toward traceability. And we could expand that question outward a lot, and I know we don't have time for that on this call. It's not the purpose of it, but I think that is the kind of thing that, like, to the point about who the other people who are in your class, and the kind of the instructor, and the amount of discussion that happens, that it's possible to explore without it being easily answered. It also isn't something that's just shrugged and saying like, well, that's hard. It's a really unfortunate situation that you'll have to fix before you can move on to the other things. Like, there are so many different paths to take.
Yeah, and just to kind of spin off of that, Kim, I think one of the really exciting things about this curriculum, and the fact that you meet so many different people from all over the world who are interested in confronting these challenges, you never know if you're going to meet somebody in your class who you can collaborate on a project with. These problems that are so massive and so complicated, they're going to take more than one company, or more than one person, or more than 2 or 3 or 4. And so it's a real opportunity to explore, how we collaborate and how we might coordinate with the student that we meet, or with the knowledge that somebody else has. And I think that's a really exciting opportunity about why to take this course, and build your network around people that also care about addressing some of these challenges. And additionally, related is this question about, will there be a capstone type course at any point that involves a kind of thesis, fieldwork, or experiential learning process? Yes, that is the professional level. It is a capstone course essentially, so we built that in, and it's there for you if you can make it to that level.
If I can answer the question about trade shows, and is there going to be a foundation offering taught at the next trade show? I don't know. I don't have any plans yet. I don't know about the other ASTs, but this course doesn't need anything except for a room and people. I think it's an option, and we can talk between the ASTs to organize this. I think I know I'm talking to education department to do something maybe at AST Live. That's only for the ASTs, but maybe let's see what we can offer. So I think it is an option.
Great. All right. We are at the top of the hour. I see that there are a couple more questions that have come in. I've been keeping track of those and passing them along as quickly as I can, which hasn't been quite fast enough. But I just want to let everyone know that we will have all of these questions collected. They'll be shared with all of our panelists, and we'll respond to them either individually, if we want to go in-depth, if it's a question that requires an in-depth explanation. Otherwise, what we often do after webinars is we create an SCA news article with some of the frequently asked questions, or exploring a really prominent topic that was shown by your interest. So Is there anything that our panelists would like to say? I kind of jumped in there to begin the wrap up.
Oh, thank you for
So
doing
before
it.
we do that, I want
Thank
to
you all. Yeah.
Please reach out to us. We're happy to answer any questions that anyone has, and we're here to continue the conversation. So don't be shy. That's what I would say.
And I'll be back next week with the Spanish version of the same webinar, same introduction.
Yes, absolutely.
All right.
Well, I just want to thank all of our panelists. Thank you, Kim. Really appreciate all the information you shared. And you'll be hearing more from us, everyone. Thanks for joining.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye. Everett, are you